Okay, I'm at my next residence here, and this is General Edwin Walker. I'm going to show this to you quick, and then I'm going to boot, scoot, and boogie here because I don't want to be accused of stalking someone's house. This is not the Edwin Walker house of 1963, but I wanted to show you that this is 4011 Turtle Creek Boulevard, and that is the address of General Edwin Walker. And you can see here it's in a beautiful neighborhood. Very cloistered, big stately homes, nice apportioned boulevard here. You walk down that direction from which I came, and there's a park and a big pond and all these beautiful homes, one-way streets, very well manicured lawns. Of course, General Edwin Walker was a general, obviously, in the U.S. Army until JFK fired him. This is with respect to its relevance beyond the fact that he was a Dallas resident and was a vehement opponent of JFK and the whole Kennedy administration. I talked about that in an earlier video. Remember, he had already had 2 run-ins, and there was the potential of a third with JFK. The first run-in was in Europe when JFK had to fire him after it was discovered he was proselytizing his troops. He comes home to big cheering crowds, and he was considered a hero. He was an avowed segregationist. He believed that Kennedy was weak against the Soviets, and he was a very strident anti-communist. He was a John Birch Society member, that right-wing extremist organization. And so, for a number of reasons, he was an opponent of Kennedy and his administration. Then he had his second altercation with the Kennedy government when the James Meredith riots happened down in Oxford, Mississippi. And they weren't riots, they were just protests until General Edwin Walker arrived and stirred up the crowd. Then they became riots, which is why Bobby Kennedy had him arrested for sedition. He later released, but had him arrested to make a point. And so this just set him up even more so in the eyes of a lot of Southerners as the Southern Democrat that they wanted to support in the 64 primaries if he would decide to run against Kennedy in the 64 primaries. And that would be potentially the third confrontation with Kennedy. He hadn't made up his mind yet, but there were a lot of folks in the South that viewed him kind of in the same vein they viewed Douglas MacArthur in his altercation with Truman during the Korean War. So he was sort of a local hero. And Kennedy's coming to his town November 22nd, 1963. This is where he lives. So he's clearly made a good living for himself. He lives in one of the finest neighborhoods in all of Dallas. And but something had happened during the summer, actually during the spring of 63. He had been shot at. On April 10th, 1963, Walker was sitting at his desk in his home, and someone took a shot at him. It was an assassination attempt. And it was later claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald had been the one who took the shot at Walker. Marina Oswald reported that she had, quote, asked him what happened, and he said that he just tried to shoot General Walker. I asked him who General Walker was. I mean, how dare you go and claim to shoot? How dare you to go and claim somebody's life? And he said, well, what would you say if somebody got rid of Hitler at the right time? So if you don't know about General Walker, how can you speak up on his behalf? Because he told me he was something equal to what he called a fascist. However, and remember now, we just came from George de Mohrenschildt's place where he admitted he was Lee Harvey Oswald's handler up till March of 63. This is April. So he's now under the direction and guidance of another handler, and her name is Ruth Payne. And so, consequently, we know he's a CIA agent or asset. We know he doesn't do anything unless he's told or instructed to do so. I mean, even up to and including moving from Fort Worth to Dallas. He only did that because George de Mohrenschildt told him to. So if Lee Harvey Oswald did as he said he did, took a shot at General Walker, it was because he was instructed to. We know as a matter of fact. However, what if it wasn't him? What if it was just part of the legend that was going to be used to hang around Lee Harvey Oswald's neck later in the year. That, hey, this is an assassin we're talking about. He took a shot at General Walker. Why wouldn't he take a shot at President Kennedy? You know, an interesting thing that always bothered me about the inconsistency of that was that they were politically, if he was doing it, let's just say, or assume for a second that the Warren Commission was correct in that he did take a shot at General Edwin Walker and then he later shot Kennedy. Why? What's the motive? If it's politics, it doesn't make any sense, because Kennedy and Walker aren't anything, there's nothing similar about them. Their politics are worlds apart. So why would Oswald take a shot at both of them? It didn't make sense from a purely political standpoint, but that's what the Warren Commission wanted us to believe. Anyway, there is a witness. His name is Kurt Coleman. And Kurt Coleman saw two men making their escape after the shot on April 10th, 1963. He said one of them stopped to place something in the back of his Ford sedan, and then they both drove off in separate directions, or separate cars. As Oswald did not have a driver's license, this has raised serious doubts about whether or not he could have been involved in the assassination attempt against Walker. After the assassination of Kennedy, a photograph of Walker's home was found among Oswald's possessions. Oh, so this is what the Warren Commission puts up as proof that he was the one who took the shot. Like he was stalking him. He was casing the joint before he went and tried to kill him. When the photograph was turned over to the Warren Commission by the FBI, however, there was a hole in the picture right where the license plate, there was a car parked in the driveway, and it was not General Edwin Walker's car. But you couldn't read the license plate because a hole had been punched in the picture right where the license plate was. So conveniently, you could basically claim that car was anybody's car because there was no way to disprove it since the license plate was punched out. We know it didn't belong to Walker, so it had to be somebody else. And at that time of day, right about the time the shooting happened, suspicions were that that car was involved in the shooting. Another photograph taken by Dallas police showed Oswald's possessions laid out on the floor of police headquarters. This included that same photograph of Walker's home, this time without the hole obscuring the license plate. So here's what we have. Dallas police went in. They found among Oswald's belongings in his home a picture of General Walker's home, including the driveway with the car. And it was a completely intact picture. By the time it got turned over to the Warren Commission, however, a hole had been punched out where the license plate was. So somebody made a decision that that car and that license plate would somehow disturb the narrative in such a way, helping Oswald's case, proving that he wasn't the one who took the shot. So they punched the hole out so as to obscure the license plate so it could never be determined who really took the shot at General Edwin Walker. The witness who saw it said it was two people and they ran off in separate directions, put something in a car, and drove off in two separate cars. So I believe this is just part of the bullshit campaign, the effort to be able to add to the cover story a previous assassination attempt Oswald had allegedly made so as to convince the American people if he tried it once, why wouldn't he try it a second time? So that's the story of George de Mohrenschildt, of General Edwin Walker. George de Mohrenschildt was the previous video. That was the handler that was asked by the CIA to handle Oswald in exchange for an oil contract in Haiti. And then he handed him off to Ruth Paine. During the time Ruth Paine was handling Oswald, we have this incident here on Turtle Creek Boulevard involving General Edwin Walker. On to my next destination.